Welcome to the Dice Tower, a series of video reviews about board and card games. Here are your hosts.
Hey everybody, I'm Roy Canning.
I'm Wendy Yee. I'm Camilla Cleghorn.
I'm Z Garcia.
And today we're taking a look at Betrayal at House on the Hill 3rd edition. Third time, is it the charm? We shall see.
Oh, we're about to find out, I guess. Yeah, this game's come out a few times before, obviously. It's a very popular game.
A few different versions.
That's true. It's
Is the
inspired.
second version the same as the Baldur's Gate, or is it?
Not really. They're kind of
Okay.
different games. They had Baldur's
Okay.
Gate was kind of like a spin-off, but it was around the same time as they came out with Widow's Walk, I think is what it was called, the expansion, right?
Right,
Right.
yeah.
And then the Scooby-Doo type of stuff, which I never messed with.
I've played the first edition, second edition. I think I've played all of them at this point. I've played the
Really?
Baldur's
Oh,
Gate
wow.
one, I played the Scooby-Doo one, and now I've played this one. So I've played everything, not extensively. I think I played first edition probably more than anything else.
Okay.
But-
okay.
Wow.
But yeah, lots
You're
of Betrayal at House on the
well-versed.
Hill. But hey, we'll throw it to Z to show you how it's played.
So here's most everything you are going to get in the box. You're going to get a rule book. You're going to get the Survivor's Guide, the Secret of Survival, the Trader's book there for when the teams split up and there's a traitor and a bunch of good guys. And you are going to get a stack of tiles, a bunch of tokens that I'm going to move off to the side here. You're going to get the landing for where the game begins. This is the entrance to the mansion. 3 stacks of cards, as well as some player reference cards and a few other things. And then you are going to get the characters. These are the 3 I'm picking here. There are 3 others. And you are going to begin right here at the entrance. Then every player is given one of these, which is going to track your might, your speed, your knowledge, and your sanity. These are double-sided. You can play with either character you want, and they share the same figure, the same miniature here. So I got 3 of these, the 3 that I'm beginning with, and then you're also going to get some dice. To set up the game, you are now going to pick one of these 5 scenarios, which is the reason why you are here. So for example, we could do Cursed. Let's do that one, all right? And this card says, you've all been cursed. You've got to find a way to fix things and fast. There must be something in this house that can break the curse. That's it. That's all you get. On the back of this is how the, not how, but the, when the haunt triggers and you decide who the traitor is, you're going to be referencing the back of this card. So we're all cursed. We're in this mansion trying to figure out what's going on. Fine. We'll set this aside for now. And then we are ready to begin. So the players are going to be taking turns until the haunt is triggered. Then you'll read from the 2 books I showed you and keep playing until one side or the other wins. That's typically the way it works. So let's start with this character here. We'll focus on them. So we've got a speed stat, like I said, which is how many spaces they can move. So his speed right now is 5. It could go all the way up to 8. It's likely to drop instead and eventually possibly kill him. So he's going to be moving around. When you move, you can move around the explore rooms that are connected, and you can also step into an unexplored space. After you discover a room in this game and deal with that room, your turn is over, and the next player will go. So this player is going to go 1, they're going to go 2, and step into that space. And then we draw a tile from the stack that can fit on this floor. Right now we are on the ground floor. There is an upper landing and a basement landing that will come into play in just a little bit. They would, this would be face up on the table somewhere to denote the 3 levels of the mansion. But for right now, if the top one doesn't fit, discard that until you find one that does fit. This one can go into any of them. And then the other ones we can just put on the bottom there. And then we reveal that room. It's a mystic elevator. The mystic elevator is a room that you have to now line up with this space that is going to allow you a new ability. It says once per turn, when you enter this tile, you may roll 2 dice, move the mystic elevator to an open doorway on, and it tells you where you can go. You can go to the basement, ground floor, upper floor, or any region if you roll high enough. The dice in this game have blank sides, 2 blanks, 2 1s, and 2 2s. So that might be it. Maybe they stay there, then the next player will go. They have a move of 4, for example. They'll go 1. They'll go actually this way. They'll go right in there. And then they'll flip over cards until they find one that can be placed. You have to line up at least the door you're walking in through, like I said. So perhaps they'll put that room there. It is the conservatory, and it shows you a symbol right here, which means it's time to draw from that stack. In this case, an item card. So we'll draw the item. It's a leather jacket. It's very heavy. You aren't sure what kind of animal it's from. Roll an extra die whenever you defend against an attack. This player now has this jacket, this ability, and they're going to hang on to that. And you'll continue doing this. The next player will go, perhaps they'll reveal a gymnasium. When you discover this tile, gain 1 speed. So they'll be a little bit faster. Someone's going to make it up to the top floor and eventually discover things up there. So they might discover this observatory up on the top floor of the mansion. And there's a new symbol there as well. This is for the omen. So the omen is how you generally advance the game. They're going to draw an omen. They're going to take a look at that. It's a dog. It stares at you with a keen intelligence. It says add 1 to the result of your speed rolls. It has an ability. And then it says when this card is drawn, make a haunt roll. Ignore this roll if the haunt has already begun. The way it works, let's say this was the first one, and the third one is finally revealed. Somebody drew a book from another tile, and then somebody gets this idol. And then they make a haunt roll after each of these. The way for it to trigger is you are going to roll a die for each haunt that's been discovered, including the one you are now rolling for. And if you get at least a total of 5 or more, you trigger that haunt. So when the first one's found, it doesn't really matter. You can't get 5 on this. And on the second one, even if you get the highest thing, you still can't do it. So for the third one, you would roll, it's a 4. The haunt still hasn't triggered. Eventually somebody reveals this one. And now they roll 4 dice. And the haunt just got triggered. So how do we know what happens? Well, we go to this card, the cursed card, and we look on the back. What's the idol that triggered it? It was the skull. And we check a number. The skull says 46. And who is the traitor? The haunt revealer. So we know who the traitor is going to be. We go to the 2 books. We read that entry 46. That's the scenario number. And we go from there, now splitting the team into the haunt revealer and everybody else. Fighting each other, likely trying to eliminate each other. So that's what's going on. You are exploring this mansion, growing the 3 different levels, ultimately trying to gather items, maybe discover some omens. There are events as well that get triggered from some of these rooms. Let me find a room here that's going to give you an event, and I'll show you what that might look like. So say you got this dining room, for example. Well, you draw an event that's going to say a vial of dust, a bell jar holding a strange particulate. Looking closer, you find that it's a fine dust. It coats the inside of the glass. If the haunt has not started, you may make a haunt roll. On a 5+, turn to haunt 3 in the traitor's tome. You are the haunt revealer. On a 0 through 4, gain 1 sanity. It's probably better to keep it inside the jar. If the haunt has started, or if you choose not to make a haunt roll, lose 1 might and gain 1 sanity. So there you go. Those are the kinds of things you are going to find. You do a little reading, you discover something, you do a little rolling against that thing. There you go. Hopefully that gives you enough of an overview to understand what's going on in the game, what we are doing, how the whole thing is set up. Let's go ahead and go back up to the group.
Awesome. So Betrayal at House on the Hill, I know we've talked a little bit about our experience with it there a little bit, but it's an interesting game. I mean, it's kind of unique in what it does with the whole traitor mechanism and stuff like that. How do you guys feel about this edition compared to your various experiences with other editions?
I personally remember the thing that was most memorable to me from playing before was the game almost consistently finding a point at which it broke, in which mechanically it sort of came to a halt because some rule wasn't accounting for some room that was found and stuck somewhere that it shouldn't be, and something went off the rails.
Or some person had the wrong item.
Or
so things couldn't happen.
Or back in the day with first edition, like the haunt could be triggered even earlier than it can be now, and then you had to hope that the mansion builds out far enough to where we actually have a game, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So that was the original thing, and of course that's been the main, I think, thing that they've tried to address both here and in pretty much every edition. I think people who like Betrayal at House on the Hill they almost enjoy and revel in the kookiness and the weird things that can happen, even though they don't make sense, right? Like, and I think this one specifically pushes some of those things very much towards a more cohesive story.
Right.
And some things away from a more cohesive story. By that I mean you set up that scenario where you have a reason for being in the mansion, right?
Right.
And then you'll eventually trigger one of those haunts and go from there.
Yep. I mean, Betrayal has never been a game that's been about like, oh, the strategic decisions that we're going to make are going to lead to this person winning versus that person. Like, it's one of those games that you just have to like sit around for the ride and see what happens a little bit.
Yeah.
You know?
Watch the story unfold.
I think I came in like with a lot of tender feelings for this game. You know, it's one that I played a lot when I was getting into the hobby, and I have a lot of, I guess, maybe nostalgia for the game. You know, I really, really enjoyed I believe it's the second edition is the one that I played. But I will definitely admit that it does have those moments where you're like, it just kind of grinds to a halt, the older version.
Yeah.
I didn't find that as bad in this one, in the scenario that we played. It definitely was still sticky, and I think I was disappointed that the rules are still not completely clear. There were still times where we're like having to look it up and be like, hey, well, then I assumed that this would make sense because thematically, or it says this rule, which is kind of vague. So if we apply it this way, okay, do we all agree this is how it's going to work?
It's kind of weird though, because it's like this game that like it always ends up coming to like where you have to kind of like guess or like almost role play. How's this going to work? Maybe they like have this game with role players in mind, but because you're on opposite teams fighting each other, you can totally end up with arguments. And in certain scenarios where like you're the hidden traitor or something like that, you don't want to be like, no, we should do the thing that helps the bad guy. You can't even stand up for yourself in that sort of situation.
Exactly, especially if it's one of the hidden ones. I mean, if it's one of the cooperative modes, maybe that's a little bit more flexible.
Right.
But I don't think it was any issue in our game because it was kind of one of those, okay, obviously this is how it should be, even though that's not what the rules say. They don't clarify it. We were able to come to a decision pretty quick.
There was still that moment of like, wait, everything stops.
It did.
Yep.
Let's reread this.
Let's figure it out.
Let me read this again. What do you think they mean by that line there?
I lean this way, you lean that way.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even a scenario, the last one there, that was like a clutchy one or anything. It just, that always seems to be a thing. Again, I think people who love this game from before are going to find this much more streamlined.
Right.
I think this one has been, I think the formatting in the books is a little nicer. I think, just structurally,
I like how
it's
they
a little
trigger
more
the haunt.
straightforward.
Like I was saying, the fact that there's different starting scenarios that you have, like a little prequel thing, it makes it so you can make sure that you don't trigger the same haunt like 5 times in a row or whatever, or like over and over again. You can kind of have a little bit of variety in your like starting scenario story.
They kind of took that from Scooby-Doo, because Scooby-Doo does that as well.
Yeah, so you can make sure you don't trigger the same haunt back to back, which would be very not fun, you know. Like, oh man, we're chased by the giant cat again, you know.
Right. I mean, also not statistically likely though, right?
It's not, but you can guarantee it isn't by, or you can at least give yourself, a different reason for being in the mansion, which is what that little card is. I think that's more thematic. I mean, you walk into the mansion and immediately that theme goes right out of the window. You're like, hey, look, it's a blood room. And oh, here's the laundry. And why were we here again? Weren't we invited by a secret email? So why are we wandering in this creepy mansion with clearly demons in the walls?
Why don't we just leave? That's what I was saying.
Whatever.
I was like, my character should just
can never go
Can I leave? Oh, I can't leave.
I guess that door locks behind you thematically. I don't know. Anyway, they try to inject more story in the front and the back end. I think on the flip side of that token, they made some rules a little more streamlined and removed some quirky things that could happen in previous games, which I think some people are actually going to miss. The bizarre things like, haha, look, there's a garden outside the second story window, like on that floor. Weird stuff. I'm picking something out of the air, but I like the structure being a little stronger. I do like mechanically that we're going to run into fewer moments where everything stops. But it does retain a lot of that feeling, which I assume is on purpose. The game is extremely popular. I mean, the previous editions.
I think Betrayal is always going to be that game of like look at the dice, they only have 1s, 2s, and 0s on it, haha, how terrible is that, and it's horror theme. I mean, you really have to, there's random events coming, it's just chaos and randomness the whole way through, and then sometimes you like get in the boat and then it starts to feel like it's sinking like halfway through as you're going out in the water. I mean, it's definitely not an airtight game, even in this edition. I don't think the rule structure, you're going to have to make things up a little bit and try to like go off the will of the party and try to guess a little bit, because they just can't iron out all the different details that could happen up in the game, which
is sad.
Unfortunate.
Right, and
It's very sad that it's been so many editions and we're still not there.
Right,
We're
and I don't understand
we're not
why.
closer to there. You know what I mean?
Is it like lack of play testing? I think that's what I'm struggling with. Is like how on the 3rd edition do we still have these problems that
And
have been there since
essentially,
the
what,
first?
the 5th edition?
I mean, at this
Right,
point, I'm like,
yeah.
is it on purpose, though? That's what I'm saying. Are we just tidying it up a little bit and assuming the rest is very much what people want from this game?
Right.
Maybe it's a me problem, not a 4th, 5th, whatever edition problem. I know it's 3rd.
Yeah.
There's been other games in between. So I just have to assume then that that's super fun to make it up, to sometimes run into a scenario that isn't super playable, but hilarious instead. Is that what people want? Maybe that's it.
Sure.
And if so, you're going to get a better structured game here that is still going to give you that sometimes. You'll still have funny moments.
Right.
You're still drawing cards that are, ooh, creepy. Though I do feel like they pulled back on the flavor text on those cards.
Oh, they did a
People are
lot.
gonna
That
have
was
those
a
stories where
huge
like,
disappointment.
remember when we started the haunt and like Greg like flipped over the thing and like killed all of us the first round? Wasn't that great? Ha ha ha. You know, that's gonna happen because sometimes it's just gonna be so lopsided one way or the other.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, to piggyback off your comment here about the flavor text, I definitely feel like they pulled back on the flavor text and the artwork changes and that kind of stuff. They just softened the whole experience a little bit, you know? And so while they've streamlined the rules and that kind of stuff, as someone who does have, again, a lot of tender feelings for this game, it's those changes kind of, it doesn't feel as horror-y, not as horrific. But also
maybe
like the flavor
getting
text.
into darker and darker things.
Maybe that's it. Maybe my threshold has risen. Maybe.
That's
No,
you carry around all the
but
time.
the flavor text, I mean, it's definitely shortened. It's
Yeah,
not
it's
as
just like
creepy.
a line or two.
Right. The artwork is a little bit more hipster vibe rather than kind of that true horror,
That
that
is true.
the other one came
Yeah.
from, and that was it. Just went a little soft.
I agree with that. I think the artwork change here is not to my liking necessarily. I like the cover. I think the cover's strong. I think the characters and the backstories they gave them is very the CW kind of vibe.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah,
huh? What?
Yeah.
I didn't really like that.
Were there children in the last version?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were.
Okay, there's still children.
What did you guys think of the sliders on the player boards, the quality of the cards and cardboard, all that stuff? Especially if you know the last one.
Right.
That's
I mean,
one thing I personally, that's one thing I was hoping to see a bigger jump in.
It's a teeny bit better, but you're still gonna like. I feel like it's not gonna age well. It's
Yeah.
still
Right.
like, it's the same thing. I mean,
I feel like
overall, I don't think this was a big enough jump for somebody who has the older editions to even be like, oh, I need the new edition. There's not like significant component upgrades.
Right.
There's not even significant rule upgrades, in my opinion, to like make you be like, oh, I should jump on board or whatever with the new edition as opposed to
Right.
having an older one.
I wouldn't say it's
Except
mean,
having more
no.
stories. I think being able to say like, oh, I feel like I've played a lot of what was in the old one.
I think you'd have to play a lot though
You
to
would.
wear
But
out
I
the
do
other
feel
one.
like you may end up seeing a little
Probably
bit of
the
things that
same.
feel very much the same or very kind of repeated in this as well. So
Right.
there's a bit of that.
So I don't know. I didn't feel like the components. If anything, I thought it was a real pendulation, because the last one I know I ended up upgrading the little character sheets with the stats on it because it was just so sticky and so hard and they fell
Right.
off. They were
Or
just
too
really
loose,
clunky.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
These I feel like it's set up to be too loose from right now. Like this time was fine, but 2 plays in, once you start moving those little
Yeah.
swords, I think it's going to be just the same problem on a different kind of cardboard. I also had trouble with the actual tiles. I didn't find them very easy to read. I feel like the text, they went smaller text, and it's that dark background with the white writing, but of course the picture's still there, so it was just,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was a whole lot of, what's that one say again? What's that one say? You know, it was really difficult to read. So I was disappointed in that as well.
Yeah, I think component quality is a lateral move, maybe even a little bit of a step back with the artwork, unless you love it. That's fine. But then I think the main thing here is what you were talking about.
Right.
If you own 2nd edition Betrayal at House on the Hill, do you need this? I lean towards a pretty firm no.
Right.
I would say stronger. If I had the 2 editions, I would take second edition over this edition.
Really?
I would.
I think they're about the same for me.
I mean, I would want to implement like the haunt rules from this one, and some of the ones that I think they learned a lot from Scooby-Doo and implemented that. But I'd already done that because I have Scooby-Doo, and so I was like, oh, I like that, and went ahead and put it in my edition.
The thing I find interesting is like the Scooby-Doo version is definitely way more kiddie, but it kind of ends up. I lean more towards that. You know?
Yeah.
I don't have the nostalgia for the second one. I've played it, but I don't have that nostalgia for it. If I was presented with both, I would take this one.
Gotcha.
I think it's a little stronger. It's a little tighter. I feel that the haunt get triggered a little earlier. I like the new haunt rolling rule. I think is likely to trigger a little earlier. The game just seems a little sort of tightened up a little bit. You're still going to run into issues, all those things we said. But it does feel like a 3rd edition. It does feel like a little...
And they didn't patch all the leaks, you know. The roof still has holes coming in. There's water coming in from all sides. So it's Betrayal at House on the Hill, still.
It is. And again, if you like that,
then
you're good.
And it's for you, yeah.
On the other hand, if you like that, you probably have second.
Right, yeah.
Or somebody you know does.
Yeah, and it's not worth replacing.
Awesome. Well, do we want to go ahead and give our final thoughts on this then?
Who wants to start? When do you want to start?
Sure. So I played the 2nd edition only one time like a decade ago, so I barely have any memory of it.
Okay, right.
But playing this, I mean, it's not my type of game. It very group dependent for me. If it's a fun, rowdy group and we're really like getting into the story, then I think it's super fun. But if playing for the mechanics, it's not going to be my jam. So I'm going to give this a 6. Because I think that it's a fine game for those people that it's for. And if you want me to show you how to play it at a convention, it's very quick and simple and easy to hop on board.
All right. Like I said, I come with a lot of history with this game, love this game, and so I'm trying to, in my rating, just focus on this game and not completely compare it, to the other. And so if I take that out, I'm actually going to come in at a 6.5. The other game, the 2nd edition, I'd rate much higher, but I just don't feel like this one fixed the problems it needed to fix. I did like the streamlined rules. I do like you said, I think it's less clunky. It does run a little bit smoother, but there's still those hiccups, still those hang-ups, and because I don't have the nostalgia for this one, and I don't care for the artwork, and I think the flavor text is pretty weak. It's not one that I would want to bring back to the table without my history of the game. So yeah, I would stick with 2nd edition, and again, just implement some of the rules to it. So I'm going to go 6.5. I didn't care for it.
I'm going to give it a 6, but that's actually higher than my rating for the 2nd edition. I thought the 2nd edition was very clunky. Just a real clunker. So I do think this one's a little bit tighter. Like I said, a little bit better. Don't like the artwork. Cardboard could have been better. It's Avalon Hill. I mean, you're going to get what you're going to get there. If you were coming in, you're curious about Betrayal at House on the Hill, you haven't played any of it, and this is now available, I would say this is the one you want to try. That's my opinion. It's going to have those rules already in it. You want to, sort of retrofit rules into it, and that makes sense because you have all that history. But if you don't know anything about it and you're curious, this, I would say, don't track down a 2nd edition. Try this. You're going to get basically what you would have gotten from that one, maybe a little more, slightly cleaner rules. Yes, maybe slightly less quirky, funny moments. It depends, kind of what you want out of it. But yeah, for me, it's a 6. It's an okay game. We're throwing it down, I'll throw it down. I'm just not going to go into it expecting a whole lot.
So for me, I have, like I said, a lot of history with Betrayal at House on the Hill. I've played a ton of different versions. I played like everything for it. And I would say this was one of the games that kind of helped me get into the hobby a little bit before I was even like a board gamer, I played Betrayal at House on the Hill, just as a funny thing with my friends. For me, I'm actually going to give this a 7. I mean, I would still play this game. I would just be along for the ride. I would know it's going to be clunky. It's going to be random as all get out. We're going to have a story that's zany and crazy when we're done with it, and that's fun. I find that enjoyable, but you're not really going to have any control as the game goes along. It's not going to be strategic decisions. You're just going to have to see what happens, and I find it fun. I mean, it's slightly charming in some of those ways, and I like the way that they've tightened stuff up a little bit in this version, but I don't know that I necessarily recommend this one over 2nd edition too much. I think it's about the same. I really, really wish they would have tightened it up even more so I could give it more high glowing praise.
Right, I want to say
agree.
it was such a disappointment. It was hard to like filter that disappointment out of my rating.
I
because,
agree.
Like,
They could have retained the fun, the dark, like, ooh, spooky theme
And made it
from
solid,
second and made a tighter game.
But
I don't think you have to sacrifice one to tighten up the other one. You know what I
Right.
mean?
With all its leaks and all its clunkiness, I will still play this occasionally here and there with casual gamers and things like that.
Absolutely.
you know.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that's Betrayal at House on the Hill 3rd edition. So it's been a haunty, spooky time, you know.
Haunty.
spooky.
And we all know Wendy is the betrayer. But until next time, I'm Roy Kennedy.
I'm Wendy Yee.
I'm Camilla Claghorn.
And I'm Z Garcia.
See you on the next one.